150-meter Longline vessel leaves harbor at first light, heading toward deep offshore grounds where giant great whites roam.
Once clear of land, the hull meets a colder, darker sea, far from recreational boats or coastal traffic. On deck, industrial longline drums and fairleads show that this is a commercial shark operation, not a sport trip.
Every branch line carries a heavy circle hook, sized specifically for the massive jaws of giant great white sharks. The crew walks the main line by hand, checking each connection, because a weak crimp can cost a record-sized shark.
Tubs of oily bait sit ready. They're set soon to pull apex predators up from the deep edge of the continental shelf.
In the wheelhouse, the captain traces contour lines, targeting breaks and drop-offs where great whites regularly travel. Weights and anchors go on first, designed to keep the long line riding just inside the water column used by hunting sharks. Branch lines snap on in rhythm, building a chain of baited hooks that stretches for kilometers through the dark water. An anchor and marker buoy vanish first, defining the starting point of an invisible highway of baited steel. The main line feeds out smoothly, baited hooks peeling into the wake and sinking along the chosen depth band.
Behind the ship, scattered buoys mark a route no one can see, hanging hooks somewhere between surface and abyss.
Before the line soaks, the crew reviews signals, knowing that loaded shark hooks can threaten men as easily as fish.
With the final buoy set, engines throttle back, and the long, silent soak begins over unseen migratory lanes.
Below the hull, baits hang in mid-water, a string of offerings spaced along an invisible contour of depth and temperature. Each bait rolls lazily in the current, its scent forming a long, thin trail the sharks can follow from far downrange. For long minutes, nothing moves but drifting particles and the slow sway of hooks in the dim water column.
On the surface, the vessel waits and watches its own markers, while the real drama plays out far below.
Eventually, a shape materializes, a giant great white, its tall dorsal fin cutting slowly through the filtered light.
The shark circles once, white belly flashing as it inspects the hanging bait with the caution of an apex predator. With one decisive bite, the hook rolls into the jaw hinge, locking firmly as the shark turns away from the line.
Shocked by sudden pressure, the great white drives ahead, transferring brute power straight into the loaded branch line.
On deck, the line jumps hard, and every man at the hauler knows instantly that something big just came tight. In open water, the whole fish shows, a broad torpedo of muscle carving a heavy arc around the tightened line. A close view confirms the system working exactly as designed, metal buried in bone, not in throat or gills. The shark drops toward darker water, using depth as leverage, but the anchors limit how far it can run. Instruments spike into the high zone, confirming that this is not a small blue shark tapping the bait. The shark sweeps sideways, showing its full belly and flanks as it searches for any angle that might free it.
Eventually, the fight settles into a grinding stalemate, neither shark nor steel giving more than a few meters.
At the stern, the crew clips into harness points, ready to trade hydraulic power against raw shark muscle.
The shark's angle shifts upward, a sign that relentless pressure is finally peeling it away from its preferred depth band. At the controls, power is dialed back, trading brute force for a measured rise that protects every crimp and knot. Suspended between bottom and surface, the shark circles beneath the line, burning energy with every slow rotation. Up close, the eye shows a calm calculation, the expression of a predator suddenly outmatched by unfamiliar pressure. It tries one final deep surge, but the anchors turn the run into a brief lunge rather than a clean escape. On deck, hands and harnesses share the load, each small adjustment keeping the line away from steel edges.
Gradually, exhaustion creeps in, tail beats shortening as the shark is drawn higher above the deep gradient. Light
thickens around its dorsal fin, a sign that the battle has climbed into a zone where the crew can finally see it.
At the surface, a heavy boil and a tall dorsal fin confirm that the unseen weight on the line is a true great white.
Men at the rail catch glimpses of a massive back rolling just below the chop, the shark finally within arm's reach.
The shark's head slides past the hull, all muscle and scarred cartilage, its power still obvious even in fatigue.
At the rail, a tail strap pull comes out, the safest way to control that kind of weight without using nets.
The shark settles on its side near the hull, giving the crew a narrow window to slip a strap around its tail.
With one precise movement, the tail strap slides into place, securing the rear of the shark without cutting into flesh.
Head and tail connections meet at a single lift point, turning a wild predator into a balanced rigging problem.
For a moment, the great white hangs still, lines set, as the crew commits to lifting several hundred kilos of shark.
Winches engage, pulling the shark's head out of the water and revealing the true girth of its chest and shoulders. For a brief moment it hangs in open air, a naturally giant great white, framed against steel, spray, and gray sky. The load settles onto the deck, and the crew moves in fast, stabilizing head and tail before loosening hardware.
The circle hook backs out of bone with a twist, having done its work without shredding the shark's mouth or gills. Now the fight turns into numbers, length, girth, and estimated weight written down for science and regulation reports. From above, the shark dominates the work lane, its length and depth dwarfing the men who brought it here.
The head shows thick cartilage, conical teeth, and scarred skin, the hardware of an animal built for big prey. A broad sling is run under its body, turning ungainly mass into a load that can be moved without tearing flesh. Steel and fabric share the load as the shark leaves open air, headed for the chilled dark below decks. In the hold, the giant takes its place on ice beside smaller great whites, all part of the same regulated quota.
Ice is piled thick over the carcass, locking in temperature and buying time for the long run back to port.
The hold tells a single species story, white bellies and gray backs stacked carefully for maximum quality control. With the big shark secured below, the crew turns back to business, rebuilding the line for a final pass along the grounds.
By dusk, the vessel pushes homeward along its own buoys, holds heavy with shark and crews heavy with fatigue. Below the hatch, a giant great white lies buried in ice, the first clear measure of this trip's success.
In the hold, white-bellied sharks line the ice, a single species catch stacked carefully against the steel hull.
Tags mark each shark for traceability, linking this heavy carcass to coordinates, dates, and longline set numbers.
Shovels of ice build thick insulation, keeping shark meat cold and clean for the long transit back to port.
On deck, hoses erase the immediate mess, turning a shark landing back into an orderly industrial workspace.
Hooks are loaded again, each heavy circle hook getting its own dense bait ready for another long soak.
As daylight fades, the captain lays a second line, using darkness to hide the steel from wary surface cruisers.
Below, fresh hooks hang once more in the same pressure zone, waiting for another giant great white shark to cross their path.
A second great white drifts into view, not quite as massive as the first, but still heavy enough to test the system.
It bites and turns, and once again the circle hook lands exactly where it should, in the solid hinge of the jaw. For a few seconds, the new shark drives straight ahead, pouring all its strength into a single hard run.
The line jumps again under load, and the crew eases power, feeling out the weight on this fresh hookup. Suspended between depths, the shark circles under the main line, turning its speed against the patient pull of steel.
Gill slits pump harder and longer as fatigue creeps in, trading panic runs for slower, forced ascents.
At the surface, a second dorsal fin breaks through,
confirming that the new load is another great white, not a bycatch species.
The crew repeats their method, slipping a strap around the tail to keep the shark aligned and under control.
Once head and tail are connected, the shark becomes a load. Still dangerous, but now defined by rigging angles and strain.
Another great white rises into open air, smaller than the first but still massive against the background of steel.
It joins the first on the deck, another carcass to weigh, measure, and move before the weather turns worse.
From above, two giants lie side by side, the true scale of the night's work measured in meters and girth.
In the hold, the second shark takes its place, ice packed between bodies to keep every side equally chilled. Tag cards record where and when each shark came aboard, building a paper trail through the entire supply chain. Once the last hooks are cleared, the gear itself becomes the focus, cleaned and coiled for its next long deployment. With quotas met and lines recovered, the captain finally turns the bow toward the distant coast.
In the mess, hot plates and tired jokes replace the intensity of the rail for a few short minutes.
Sleep comes in cramped bunks, measured more in miles left to steam than in hours on a clock.
The run home is rough but workable, the hull punching steadily through stacked gray swells.
Hours later, the first signs of land creep over the horizon, trading offshore risk for coastal traffic patterns.
The vessel slides into a harbor built for heavy steel and cold cargo, far from tourist marinas and sport docks.
Lines go ashore, tying shark gear and crew to a dock where the next phase is schedules and weights, not waves.
Dock crews take their first look into the hold, confirming the long run home was worth the fuel and risk.
Cranes trade deck space for concrete, swinging each iced shark from ship to shore in controlled arcs.
Inspectors check eyes, belly, and tag data, confirming quality and identity before the carcass enters processing.
Inside the plant, the shark leaves ice and steel tubs for stainless benches built to handle heavy carcasses.
The body is broken down in stages, with head, fins, and trunk all kept within strict regulatory guidelines.
Under the skin lies dense, pale meat, cut in broad slabs designed for steaks rather than delicate fillets.
The trunk becomes a series of thick steaks, each one cut to handle high-heat cooking without breaking apart.
Steaks pass through vacuum sealers, trapped in clear plastic where their color and texture remain plainly visible. Labels fix the story to paper, stating species, origin, and lot numbers that will follow each box to its destination. Pallets roll into a chilled trailer, shifting responsibility for the meat from processors to cold chain logistics. Inside, cartons ride under cold air and tight straps, protected from both warm drafts and sudden jolts. At a central hub, shark cartons wait under fluorescent lights, a small part of a much larger cold inventory. From the warehouse, selected cartons peel off toward high-end kitchens that specialize in robust, meaty fish cuts.
In the kitchen, a chef inspects a steak, recognizing the dense grain that can handle high-heat grills and marinades.
The steak is trimmed to size and brushed with marinade, a simple treatment meant to complement rather than hide flavor.
On the grill, shark steaks sear fast, building char lines outside, while the centers stay firm and moist.
On the pass, grilled steaks hit white plates, framed by simple sides that leave the fish as the clear focus.
Servers weave between tables, balancing dishes that began days earlier on cold offshore longlines. Around the table, conversation rises as shark steaks disappear, their story folded quietly into a night out.
As service winds down, a few final plates leave the pass, closing the loop on this particular shark harvest.
In the kitchen, numbers replace flames, tracking exactly how much shark left cold storage for the dining room.
The dining room returns to quiet formality, hiding its connection to offshore steel and heavy weather. Back at the dock, the shark boat rests, lines snug and gear stacked after a season of hard miles. In the wheelhouse, the captain studies past tracks, already thinking about currents, quotas, and next year's grounds.
Drums sit quiet and hooks hang dry. An industrial arsenal waiting for the next narrow window to work. The harbor glows softly, big hulls lined up in rows, each with its own ledger of risk and return.
Far offshore, the shark grounds look empty again, their predators slipping back into deep, shifting lanes.
From above, only waves and texture remain, erasing the visible signs of long lines and working steel. The hunt for giant great whites pauses here, but the cold offshore ocean endures, shaping lives far beyond the frame.